Wow. 15 minutes past 1, Tuesday afternoon, the 12th day of March 2019. After almost, could it be 3 weeks away, giving and making room for the Emil Short-led commission on the Ayawaso West Wuogon violence from that infamous by-election. We're back with the Executive Lounge. It's a month set aside to celebrate women. We had International Women's Day last week, Thursday. But this whole month is a month set aside to celebrate, appreciate, and more importantly, where there's very little room, make more room for women to express their true potential and their prowess at complementing and growing and nurturing and shaping and leading. My guest today is a passionate educator, passionate Ghanaian. She's passionate about health, passionate about Kojo Entry, and also quite passionate about natural hair. From Sister Locks, she's recently upgraded to the classic Davi look. Founder of Young Educators Foundation. And they bring you the Young Debaters competition. And the Scrape Spelling Bee. Eugenia Techi Mensing. You're welcome to the Executive Lounge.
That was grand.
Yeah, Charlie, to get you out on a Tuesday afternoon, to actually have you block out as much time as you have just to be here requires quite a bit of appreciation, and I have to let the whole world know that you're passionate about a lot of things, and for me, that's why I think it would be nice not just to celebrate you as a woman, former Vlisco Ambassador of the Year. Was it 2016 or 15?
14.
Hey! Time flies, pal. Feels like yesterday.
Yes,
but once an ambassador, always an ambassador, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And for me, the recent theme, Balance for Better, has raised quite a number of questions. For me, what I would like us to focus on is your pet subject, education, enlightenment, and empowerment. And so, if you're ready, here is your first question. How are you today?
I'm well, Inshira. It's good to be here. It's good to see you all.
Yes, indeed. It certainly is good. And if you just tuned in, this is the Executive Lounge. If you have some contributions or questions, please send them via WhatsApp to 0244-340437. We're also streaming live on the Joy FM Facebook page. It's Facebook/Joy 99.7 FM. And also myjoyonline.com. And we will share the link to the episode later. But please, if you do have questions or thoughts, now is a good time to share them. You can also tweet at me at GH Rainmaker or mention at Joy 997 FM. And it's the Executive Lounge. And once again, you are welcome.
Thanks.
Eugenia. So this morning, I was pondering over the range of things to discuss with you. And I recall with passion how you deliberately go out of your way to ensure that your daughter speaks her mother tongue, as you call it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And I read a post somewhere where someone was just basically commenting on the president's dream to see us raise our standards to the point where we can be counted among the Singapores and Malaysia and South Korea and all of that. And the person's commentary made a point that got me thinking that let's talk about this when I see Eugenia today.
Okay. You
Mother
are setting
tongue.
me up, aren't you?
No, I'm not. Mother tongue.
Yes.
Maybe these people may not have been colonized to the extent that we were. But is there room for mother tongue, and does it hold, in your opinion, the key to unlocking the true potential of our young people when they're going through education?
Well, so my position is not just for my daughter. My position for mother tongue is that everybody must speak their own language. I was recently watching the Taiwan president doing an interview on CNN, and the dexterity with which she was swinging between speaking her mother tongue and then going back to English when it suited her, for me was spoke volumes that at the end of the day, she thinks in her mother tongue. And when you're communicating to a greater audience and you don't want to miscommunicate, you're better off speaking in the language that you think in. In her case, she was speaking to a global audience. And so best for her to speak, being a politician, to speak in the language she's more comfortable in, which is... I'm not sure what they speak. What do they speak again?
I don't know. I think it's Taiwanese for now. Okay.
Right.
So that's before I consult Google, please don't. If you know it, share it with us. 0244340437. But I think Taiwanese sounds
more like
fair.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
More like
so she's speaking in her mother tongue in a CNN interview, Global Media House, and has an interpreter who is actually translating what she's saying. The point for me was that she's making sure that what she really wants to communicate is what is being communicated. English is obviously not her first language, nor is it her mother tongue. I think that has been the bane of a lot of communication challenges we have in this problem between ourselves. We do a lot of transliteration, and so things get in communication, things get missing in translation. We also basically don't think so. In our generation, we were raised speaking our mother tongue, okay? But we're speaking to our children in English language. But we think in our mother tongue, well, I know I do, think in my mother tongue before I speak. So if I'm thinking in my mother tongue and I'm going to speak to my child in English, again, English is not my first language. There will be limitations. So we have seen that manifest in many forms, even for children, where they become, even though today's average, let's say 6 to 17-year-old speaks only English and understands some part of their mother tongue. A lot when you dig deeper, there's a lot that they are unable to communicate because it's just not there. Even though their parents, as it were, brought them up using the English language, don't forget it's a watered down kind of English. I mean, when we're in the streets, we don't speak grammar. We just speak. When we're home, we just speak
on the line.
Yes, and stuff like that. Yes, and we have children saying that and thinking that is, I mean, they're communicating, and in another circle that works. But as we've seen chief examiners' reports over the years, this sort of English is now finding its way in official language. So my position on mother tongue has been that it is important. I stand corrected, but I think that I've noticed that probably Africa is about the only country that runs its educational system purely in another person's language. And again, because we haven't mastered it, and I can speak for Ghana, we've not mastered it, and we're finding shortcuts around it, and using social media language, to communicate across board these days. It's worsening the situation. It really is worsening the situation, in addition to the fact that we're not reading. And again, I want to quickly add that when we talk about literacy, being literate in English is not the end of it. If you're, if you're literate in English and you're not literate in your mother tongue, I think that a lot of disservice is done the individual. Because you are in a society where that language is spoken. Don't forget, we sit in Accra and think Accra is Ghana. But we would want our children someday to be of use to people, say, from our hometowns, if for nothing at all. So if I'm from the Volta region and the central regions, and my child cannot speak either languages, what I've just done is denied her the possibility of ever, say, wanting to work there, wanting to work with the people locally at the grassroots level. What you've also done is basically turned her into what I call a monolingual. These days, you can't afford to be a monolingual.
Absolutely not.
Mandarin is now the in thing. I mean, we haven't even got a hang of French.
Let alone Mandarin.
Let alone want to think of Mandarin. So if you're not speaking any of your mother tongues and you only speak in English, it's dangerous.
Extremely so.
In this world, it's dangerous. You are technically going to be in a minority, because even in the West, they're learning other languages.
Yeah.
We have students who come from the West to Ghana, to the University of Ghana, and learning our languages, understanding how they came about.
You know, it's quite interesting. I've forgotten the Chinese university in question, but they actually have an Africa studies unit that actually teaches, and they study every single language on the continent. And this was my friend Gottfried Akotobwafo. You know, he did his doctorate in China, and he remarks that, you know, the people who had never been to Ghana but could speak Dagbani, and he, born and raised in Ghana, couldn't
speak a word.
You know,
of it.
this is. But I'd like to pick your thoughts on. So, I mean, the little history I know indicates that, you know, so we were colonized for a while, and then, you know, adopted the English language. And I remember going to school. We were taught English, and it was frowned upon to speak what was called vernacular when you were on the school compound. So somewhere along the line, we felt that we should relegate the language of our mother and adopt this new language. And I honestly, I've been just racking my mind to remember if, when I have my dreams, the language spoken in my dreams is in English or in a local language.
Yeah.
And I'm of mixed heritage. My
Yes.
mom is from Togo. My father is half Ekwapim and half Yoruba. And fortunately, the only bit of language, I mean, and we speak Ga commonly at home. You know, so
there are traces. There are traces between Nigerians and Togolese.
exactly,
You would know that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we speak Ga, the Togo Ewe to a certain extent. I'm not fully proficient, but you know, but it's frustrating when I've had to go across the border to visit, and my first 15 minutes is always a struggle because it takes a while for me to now start stringing the words together. How much of a disservice will we be doing ourselves and generations after us if we don't re-look at these languages, especially that there's a claim, and this is just a claim, that our language has not evolved well, so there's limitations.
I agree.
And things like that.
Yes,
how
I
would you go about starting to bring about a renaissance?
So I'll agree, you know, from the end that yes, the language hasn't evolved, but it probably hasn't evolved because we haven't been using it. Language evolves when you use it. Unfriend didn't used to be a word until social media, you know, surfaced. So language, for it to evolve, has to be used and abused in certain cases. But I want to the first point that you raised about the fact that, you know, schools frowned upon speaking what was called vernacular and so to speak English. I think the intention behind that, because I'm in the education space and I've been studying that you know, phenomenon, if we may call it so. And I think that obviously it was, you were just coming from the colonial era. If you were speaking vernacular, then, you know, the colonial masters didn't understand what you were saying. But if I wanted to be charitable, I would move on and say that, again, we come from different regions, we speak different languages. And so if you are speaking vernacular, you are excluding another group So let's just,
So maybe for uniformity.
For uniformity. And again, English was our official language and we've adopted it. So in school and in the office places, you were encouraged to speak the language. Again, if you don't use the language someplace, you would not be master of it. You will not be able to learn it. So in the office spaces and in the school spaces, fair enough. But where does it say that you can't use it at home? And I think that that's where the responsibility or the question of as to how the language is eroding comes from. I'm sorry, but I studied French all the way to O-level. And I dropped it after O-level because at A-level it was just frightening. It was just French and literature. It was just frightening. But the point I'm raising this because even though I learned French, and in our time it was a bit more stringent, I can't speak it convincingly because I didn't use the language.
Yeah.
So to want to say that today's child, our children are taking up Chi and Ewe lessons in school and are being tested on it when they're not even being tested orally. There's that aspect as well. That if language is not tested orally and it's just on paper, we all passed our French, didn't we?
Yeah.
Until date, children are getting ones in French and cannot string sentences together in French.
Because so they just have to remember.
Yes, how to conjugate and, so that in itself, language really, for it to thrive, must be spoken. And so if at home you're not speaking the language you think in, or the language which is yours to your children, and are speaking a foreign language, which is English, like it or not, or the official language, which is English, the barriers in communication that begin to rise. I mean, there are certain things that you would want to communicate to your child that sometimes you find yourself speaking it in your language because you can't find the English equivalent. And there's so many of such instances. And so I think that the renaissance that you ask for has to begin from the home. It can't be a policy at the education level. So it even is a policy at the education
level. So how
level.
do you do it? I mean, if we go into the home, because I've tried it and I've just relapsed like as quickly as I started.
Yeah, it's not easy. I will confess. The reason it's not easy is that so our children are spending more hours in school. Yeah. So obviously, English is more, it's more of what they hear. So there's that. There's also the fact that we're not as neighborly as we used to. I speak another 4 languages apart from Fanti, and most of them I learned from my neighbors. We're not as neighborly because we're worried. This world is not safe. But I asked this to a friend who raised it last week that the world is not safe, and that's why I don't want my child to walk on the street. And I said, and it's true. People don't drive well and whatever. But how about that bean seller who leaves their child to walk to school and come back? Is it that they don't care about their child? So that if it is a conscious, it has to be a conscious effort. I've actually had someone also say that, well, I am Ga, my husband is a Kan, and so we speak English at home, and that's why our children speak English. And I said, I'm a living testimony of a dual language home. My dad was Ewe, my mom is Fanti. They both spoke English, even though my father was in Fanspin school. He's useless when it comes to the Fanti language. He did 7 years there. He can't say a word. All he can say is "uko baby mommy." So he wasn't good at it.
Even that he couldn't get the accent.
Yeah,
right.
He can't get the accent. He can't get the words right. But so they spoke English between themselves, but each one spoke their language to us, and also the people around us. Then we call them cousins, but they were cousins from our hometowns, but they were house helps as well.
Yeah.
So the language was in use, and that's the thing. If it's children pick languages up, that's how we learned. I'm not 100% Ga. I'm partly Ga, but I learned all my Ga on the streets because I mingled with other children, and that's how children pick up language. If it's not being used, and I've said time without number to parents that look. Try it. It will seem impossible, but just keep speaking it.
You just led me to a revelation, or one of the underlying reasons why people who do language studies to the university, or even beyond secondary or up to secondary school, sometimes have to do an immersion program. where you actually go and live
Live
amongst
amongst
those
the
who speak
people.
the language.
Yes, I recently went to Abidjan, and I took my daughter. And excuse me, I have grown as I am. I never knew that salut was another way of saying hello in
Oh.
French. I was going around doing my bonjour, bonjour, bonjour.
Well, salute to you
Salut.
then. All right.
Salut. You know, and for me, it was new. I'd never heard swimming, the word swimming. I'd never heard it's piscine. I'd never heard it before. And that was the first time I was hearing it. And so, as you say, it made sense why, even after learning it theoretically, if I may call it so,
You have to be thrown
need
into
to
the-
live. So that if you probably didn't even learn it theoretically and they threw you in there. I met Ivorians, Togolese who speak French fluently but just can't write it or read it because they've just heard it.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? So I think that we really, as parents, I think that the onus is bigger and heavier on us, because what we're doing, we did a dipstick survey amongst university students 2 years ago about the fact that, you know, their mother tongue, can they identify with the mother tongue? And the feedback was always, well, my parents never spoke it to me, and so I blame them. And to be fair, it is the truth. If you don't speak the language with them, obviously they can't learn it. And at the tertiary level, and if they've been, you know, the way our educational system works these days, you spend only about 18, 20 months in secondary school. You can't, unless you're a fast learner, you can't pick up a language that strongly there. Then you move on to university, and at university it's just a melting pot, and really you're on your own. You're an adult. So it really is about being deliberately conscious.
Well, as Malcolm Gladwell will call it, the concerted cultivation.
Yes.
That you're
I like
not
that.
just working hard, but you're decidedly working hard at
Yes.
something and saying, I want to achieve A, B, and C.
And I can almost guarantee you that many of our children who we say don't speak the language, you throw them in a setting,
Oh, they will survive.
they will survive. So because they've heard you use it, they may not be able to read it, but they've heard you use it, and the context within which you use it, they
So
can
one of my-
piece it together.
One of my sons responds in English, even when you make the effort. You have to kind of like, look, my friend, I'm speaking to you in Akan or in Ga, and I expect you to respond properly. And then he'll do that.
Yes.
The other one is, you know, but then again, they have their own personality.
Yes.
So let's move away from this. This was really just a side track.
You don't say.
Can you imagine? You know, but it's 37 minutes past 1, and suddenly I wish there was a little bit more time beyond 2 o'clock for us to go into other things. But Eugenia, I mean, the woman, the girl child, and the future. Does our education, and I'm not even going to talk about society, but does our education make enough room for the female child to thrive?
You know, I tend not to want to, I'm a woman, and I tend not to want to focus only on the female child. The reason is that it probably is the reason where we are, and I will explain what I mean by that. So I want that. So yes, 20 plus odd years ago, we noticed that there was a gap. The challenge was that girls were not being allowed to go to school. The 20 years down the line, it's more than 25 years. I remember because I was in journalism school when the campaign started. And so 25 years down the line, where are we with female or girls' education is what we need to look at. And where are we with boys? I know from experience that, and this is personal, that I will feel intimidated by the next person who comes and is more educated than I am. It's a natural reaction, isn't it? And then we know that men have egos, whether we like it or not. It comes with the territory. So if we're focusing solely on educating our boys, our women, at the expense of not focusing on our men, the way I see it is that we're going to have very bright girls, and this is information that I've picked from the universities as well, where the girls are doing brilliantly well, and the boys tend to seem distracted. Because really the focus has never really been on them. Again, it's normally boys go to school and that's it. But with women or girls, when we go to school, make sure you don't get pregnant, make sure you don't do this, make sure. So we are more, what's the word I'm looking for? We're more shepherded.
Okay.
On our paths when we start, and we're warned and you're told, we're shown where all the red flag signs are, and we leave the boys to be on their own. And so I've always believed in pushing for the two. Pushing for the two. Boys also need, or men also need to understand the reason a woman needs to be educated, the reason a boy needs to be educated. And if choices have to be made, choices are made based on more of academic strengths than gender, So if it's a boy and a girl who have to go to school and we just have school fees for one person, it's not because we will not give it to the boy because, he's the boy, but we will check who is academically inclined or who's doing better and let them go to school. But to come back to your question as to where, or am I happy? Was that question? Am I happy with where girls' education is?
No, I mean, what should we do differently? But I mean, it's a kind of redundant question now based on the answer you gave, because the focus is more on how do we have a more holistic, balanced balance for better, to make sure that everyone is living out their full potential and complementing each other.
Definitely.
What would you change about today's way of raising our future leaders, both male and female?
I would change a lot. And it's with mindsets. So I would change the fact that every girl is expected to read home economics, which has typically to do with sewing and cooking and whatever, or only girls, and open it up to both boys and girls, because knowing how to sew a button onto your shirt is a life skill.
Yeah, I learned that.
Knowing how to cook to feed yourself is a life skill. Knowing how to spell is a life skill. Therefore, reading is not a girl subject, as has been bandied about. What I really would change is that kind of mentality. And I say that with you and I, we probably have lost it. No one can change our minds unless we want to change our minds.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm happy with the sort of work that I do, that I'm in a space where you can influence how our children, our young ones think. That if we were doing it this way and these were the kind of results we were getting, should we continue, or should we look at why it's important for a boy to learn how to cook? Because it's not like when you leave university and you find a job, the next thing is to find a cook. When you leave, even when you're in university, how do you survive? How do you eat? I mean, eating is a basic need in life.
And you must have the basics skill to meet that need.
Yeah, we're not saying learn how to pound fufu and do groundnut soup. But
or be a gourmet chef.
So again, to want to think that someone should do that for me, I think it's a dependency trait that we've nurtured for too long. That someone should cook for me. I expect, because of my gender, someone should cook for me. Because of my gender, someone should want to wash my clothes. Because of my gender, someone should want to stay with me. And I think those are the things I would want to change. That if you looked at it rather than I need to be self-sufficient, I need to be able to do. What if that someone walks away one day, dies one day, then you will move on to the next person who can do it. I mean, the real reason, and I'm veering into the space of marriage. The real reason for coming together for me, as a couple, should not be bordered on whether you can cook for me or not, and whether you can wash for me or not.
I certainly didn't get married because of that.
The real reason must be a commonality that we share.
Yeah.
It could be anything. It could be love of books, love of partying, whatever. And then everything else is added on. Everything else becomes an add-on.
Wow. So, how would you describe what you do? I mean,
unusual.
but I mean, you are an educator, right? What you do is it extra or co-curricular? It's co-curricular.
It's co.
So it's not as somebody once described the difference between brutal and brutality is like, right, we'll get there. But it's not formal yet. It's formal.
It complements formal. It complements formal. So, I mean, at the core of it, we're promoting literacy. And if you're not literate, you're not in the classroom. There's that to begin with.
That's right.
But for purposes of making it sound relatable to our children, we use the spelling bee. But really, we're just getting children to read and understand the language and how to use it better. So if children are reading in the classroom, and they're being given word lists to learn, and the child has a question as to why is it that pharmacy has an F sound but it's not spelled with an F, but friend has the same sound and is spelled with an F. The answer doesn't become that's how it's always been, but the answer is because it's based on where the words come from.
Right.
Based on where they come from is how they are spelled, is how they're pronounced. So that then
it's just interesting, and I've been to a couple of the finals of the spelling bee, and a word is mentioned and the person, okay, so what's the root, and then they start going into the origin of the language, and then so there was a bit of Latin or some Greek or originally French, but all of these things are, for me, they're journeys in the mind.
Very much so. And these are journeys that the children we would have started with them before you're seeing that end result. And these are journeys that we're asking that our education authorities begin to encourage in the classroom, because our children have become too rote-based. So again, as I say, the answer to the why is pharmacy not spelled with an F, the answer to that is because that's how it is. That ends the session. That's it. No more questions. So what you've just done is that you have stopped that child from you stop them from having a learning opportunity. Maybe because you yourself don't know it, and that's my biggest challenge. How again, the language is not even ours, and we're teaching it. And yet, we're not teaching it well. So our children are being misled, if I may use that word, not deliberately, but they're being misled, and hence you see the results in the way they write, the way they read, the way they pronounce or mispronounce their words, and basically, it goes on. If you're not and literacy is not limited to just reading. Reading between the lines as well is literacy. So as you say, when you hear the child asking questions like, what's the origin, what's the definition, there's a lot of critical thinking going on there. Why is it sounding this way? It's because it's from here. So if it's from here, then I must add this or I must apply that. It's a lot of critical thinking, which is not sadly supported in our classrooms. I'll give you a story. So a lady I knew who was not Ghanaian but married a Ghanaian relocated to Ghana and took her child to her husband's alma mater primary school. And they were asked to draw a market. The homework is draw a market. Why do you find it funny? It's work. No, it's social studies.
No, I'm just trying to imagine what happens next. But let me be quiet.
So they draw the market together with his mother, and then they take it home. Bring it back to school, and he scores a 0. He brings it back home, he's crying. This is his mother telling us the story. Brings it back home, crying. So the mother goes back to the school to understand why he got a 0. And the teacher says, well, he was asked to draw a marketplace, and he drew a store, which was a store in the UK, Tesco's. And we were all stunned. I mean, she was sharing this at a book club that I was at. We were stunned that, and this was one of the leading schools in the country, so for me, the question was, the teacher doesn't even know that today the marketplace can even be on the phone.
Yeah.
If we move from online to phone, more money, things get delivered. The marketing just happened, and again, even if the teacher said they were expecting like a makola, our kind of market, then maybe the context of the question should have said so.
A traditional Ghanaian market.
So again, communication, which we started with, that because it's not. If he had said, if the child were Chi speaking and it had been said in Chi, it may have been different.
True.
But he said a market, and I go to the store, and that's where he's coming from. So that's his reality. So if our educational system could be a bit more accommodating of these changes of the happenings within our system. I kind of find that the syllabus tends to be a bit static.
Rigid.
Static in delivery. It's the same old things. English language, math is taught the same way. And so, I can pick up a book and, answer questions from it. I'm not saying it should be challenging for me, but I'm saying that things have changed. I remember when I was a student in the UK studying marketing communications, our syllabus was changing every semester. Every semester.
Well, for example, China goes through that every year based on the chief examiner's report. There are changes made to the curriculum.
And you should see, you should see our chief examiner's reports. They don't mince their words when it comes to the core subjects, English, math, and the sciences. Yeah. They don't mince their words. They do make recommendations. I doubt they are applied.
Right. Let's. We've got like 7 minutes to go because I have a song to play at the end of the show. I treat every guest of mine to a song that I think they would like. Let's talk briefly about empowering. Look, there's the coming demographic dividend. It's either a time bomb or an opportunity for us. The youth bulge is just going to explode. 2 in every 5 people fit to work will be on this continent. More than any other time, and this is coming. When we talk about success, quite often the image you find, and that for women especially, is, oh, she's a lawyer. And when we're reaching out to people who, and no disrespect to lawyers, doctors, and people doing white and blue collar work, but is that the only way to guide the aspirations of today's female? That if you want to be successful, a thought leader, you should end up working in a bank, in a hospital, as a doctor or a lawyer.
I think some of the finest thought leaders, women thought leaders, are in Makola. I'll tell you that. I think some of the finest, you'll find them in Makola. You'll find them in the informal sector.
But why even the label informal sector?
I never asked in class. I should have asked. I would have had an answer for you. But you have a point there. What makes it informal? If we take away the rhetoric of the definition, what makes it informal? Because if we're all paying taxes and what have you not, so what makes it informal?
Yeah.
And I have a chair to sit on. Yeah. Anyway, I think that, glum as the future may look like, trust me, I work with the youth, and there's no holding them back. I think that their future is going to be way brighter. I think that we're going to have a lot more young people who are ready, who come out ready, with ready skills, with ready answers, with ready solutions, especially because we're in the social media era, which they have mastered to a T. And I also think that we really, as a people, need to be more accommodating of our young people. We need to include them in our space. There's too many instances where our young people are not heard until they're done with university or tertiary level, and that's when we hear them. But from primary through secondary, I think the critical mass of the best ideas can be found in that middle belt of secondary school children.
Wow.
I have met some of the finest, and I've met some who've got the brightest ideas. They are good communicators, but this is a society that is so punitive of making mistakes that some of them are scared to want to put into reality these ideas that they have. Some of them are these wild ideas. We call them wild because obviously you and I are stuck in the old age.
Yeah.
But for them, it's regular. It should be possible. But this is a community or society where you've got to stick to the recipe, stick to the norm. You want to do anything outside of the norm, it's frowned upon.
Wow. So, Mr. Komla Adom is waiting in the wings to bring us the news headlines at 2. We're about 5.5 minutes away, which means that including the music. We're at the end of the conversation. Sadly so for me, Eugenia. Sadly so.
Same here. I didn't think I'll enjoy this.
You didn't think so?
No, I enjoy children's company better, or young people's company.
Now that explains why you don't call me very often. Okay, now we know. And losing my place to kids is not a bad thing. Children are fascinating to be around, and I think you do a great job. And well done. And enjoy Women's Month, and keep leading and making impact. I'm sure some of the people your work will touch, you'll never meet them in this lifetime, but it's good to know that there's a real good purpose to what you do.
I just want to quickly add that my biggest desire, and I hope that I get to live to see it, is that we become a society that includes children. We're a society who would needle you into having children. We will needle you. But the minute the child arrives,
they don't have a say.
We don't have space for them. If you went to our restaurants, that food portions are not really child friendly. Cutlery is not really child friendly. If you went to our apartments, child spaces are an afterthought. If you went to our communal spaces, so no greenery. Look at the state of our children's park. Which child would want to play there? It's turned into something else. I keep saying that, look, the more we keep edging our children out, the more we're edging ourselves out, because they won't know how to live with us. And when we're in our old age,
that's when we'll
probably
see
be shipped off.
Yeah. To some old people's Siberia.
Yes.
Yeah. Go relax over there.
And so we need, that's my biggest dream, that we will include our children in our spaces. So we will see our children in Parliament. On Children's Day, we will have children come and present, what their challenges are. I mean, that's just an example, but let's be more inclusive. If each and every one of us can do that deliberately, have children in our space, it probably would add to the bigger picture.
Thank you. I'm going to share my 5 lessons from this conversation. Number 1, communication. Key. Learn how to communicate. More importantly, learn your mother tongue and develop it. The more you use it, the better you get at it. And number 3 is explore your world. Has lots to teach you. And number 4, encourage unconditionally. Usually we say love unconditionally, but encourage unconditionally. Yeah. That when people fail, there are lessons to be learned in there. There's either a lesson or a gratitude of the work that's done. And the final thing is that we must remember that children, if they're going to be great leaders in the future, it starts from now. So we must include them in the things we do and make space for young people to express themselves fully. Thank you very much, Eugenia Techi-Manson, founder of Young Educators Foundation, for joining us. We've made a return. Hopefully there won't be any more commissions of inquiries, and we will be back again next week, Tuesday, with another edition of the Executive Lounge on radio. And I promise you I'll bring you another exciting female leader who will blow you away. For now, Eugenia, this is Kojo Entry's Best Shot.